Welcome, everyone, to the History and Impact of Private School Vouchers in North Carolina. We are going to go ahead and get started. It's 7 o'clock and it's a summer evening, so I know many of you would like to get back to your evening, so we're going to get started right away. We're really proud to offer this webinar tonight because this is one of the topics that we get asked about all the time. What's going on with vouchers? You know, what's the latest? How did they get started? How much are we spending? And one of the things that Lynn Edmonds is with us tonight, I'll introduce her in a moment. What we've been finding out as we've gone to workshops across the state is that a lot of people do not know about school vouchers, and they have no idea how much money is being pulled out of our state coffers into this unaccountable program. So tonight we're going to try to give you a good history of private school vouchers and the impact that they're having on our public schools now. So to get this started, I want to introduce you. First, I'm Yvonne Brannon. I'm Chair of Public Schools First NC. Lynn tonight is doing this presentation. Lynn Edmonds is our Outreach Director. Lynn and I have been deep in into public education advocacy for nearly 15 years and specifically around what's going on in the North Carolina General Assembly. But before that, both of us have a history of involvement in our own local school system and the schools that our children attended in PTA. So with that history of Lynn and I'm going to turn it over to Lynn and let her get started so we can save some time at the end for questions and comment from all of you. Welcome again, and Lynn, your turn.
Good evening, everybody. As Yvonne said, I'm Lynn Edmonds. I'm Outreach Director for Public Schools First NC, and I want to thank the North Carolina PTA for partnering with us tonight. That is huge, and we are so delighted to bring this program not just to the general public, but to their membership. So thank you to the North Carolina PTA. I want to start by just sort of informing those of you that may not be familiar with Public Schools First NC. I want to just set the framework of who we are and what we're about, and that is that public schools are a public good. We are a 501c3, so that means that we do take positions on issues, but we do not endorse candidates or do candidate ratings or anything like that. But we've got opinions on things, including opinions on school vouchers, which is going to be real clear to you here shortly. But I'm going to tell you this is how we do our work. We send newsletters out weekly, especially when the General Assembly is in session. We back off a little bit on that when they're not in session, but it's weekly when they are in session. We've got fact sheets and reports and resources on our website. We do action alerts, petitions, webinars, and we advertise all of that and more all across social media platforms. So that's how we do our work. And I've got two slides for you about PTA. So one thing we hear is that PTAs cannot take positions on issues, they can't be political, etc. That is simply not true. PTA advocacy is at the heart of PTA. And their mission, and this is the national PTA, so it's going to be true for all the statewide chapters as well, is to make every child's potential a reality by engaging and empowering families and communities to advocate for all children. And yes, PTAs can take positions on issues. You can pass resolutions on issues, things of that nature. And this is just a sampling of things that the national PTA has done in the past to show you that it is permissible, and the PTA is a way to advocate on behalf of children, on behalf of public schools, and on behalf of public school funding. So that leads us into just a couple of things about public school funding, again, just to frame this conversation as we talk about vouchers. In North Carolina, most of our public school funding comes from state dollars. That's going to be governed by the North Carolina General Assembly. You see that pie chart there. I don't want to read these percentages to you, but when we talk about local and county taxes and revenues and local dollars, that's going to come from our county commissioners in North Carolina public school districts. So your local public school district, we do not have taxing authority. So public school districts, to get local funding in North Carolina, they have to go to their county commissioners to get supplemental funding, additional funding. So that's sort of the breakdown of how we pay for our schools. This always comes up when we talk about public school funding in North Carolina. What about the lottery? That's a great question. We do have a fact sheet about the lottery. You've got the QR code there, and we can send that to you in a link after the program. But the bottom line is that in North Carolina, less than 25% of lottery revenues go to education. And you can see there where the remainder of that money goes. But it's a legitimate question, and I invite you to look at our fact sheet to learn more. And I did see a couple of hand raising, but I'm going to wait a little while before we entertain questions and get involved in that. This is another funding piece. I think it's the last one I have about school funding, but it's very important. And I put this in front of every group that I speak to be honest. I don't care what the topic is. I talk about this a lot because we think it's egregious. So North Carolina's corporate tax rate was 6.9% in 2013. And in every single state budget, the legislature, after 2013, the legislature slashed it, cut it some more until it was 2.5% in 2021. At that time, that was the lowest in the United States at 2.5%, the absolute lowest corporate tax rate in the country. Apparently, that wasn't good enough. So in the most recent biennium budget, the state legislature has set the corporate tax rate to go to 0%. So what does that mean for schools? What does that mean for public education? That means that corporations such as Red Hat, Lenovo, Apple, Amazon, they will no longer be paying any taxes to contribute to the common good in this state, whether it's public schools, public roads, health and human services, infrastructure, etc. All of these things that they benefit from and their employees benefit from, but they will no longer be contributing to that common good. And this is already state law. So the only way to change this is to elect leaders, state lawmakers that will reverse it. So it's done, it's a done deal, but it's very important to understand that. All right, so we came here tonight to talk about vouchers. So we're going to start with voucher expansion. Vouchers in North Carolina, this is how they started. They are not operated through DPI. DPI does not distribute them or govern them in any way. They're governed by the NCSEAA, which you can see that on your screen. And we have two types of vouchers in North Carolina, but the reason I've got the opportunity scholarships highlighted is because that's going to be the focus of our conversation tonight. There is another type of voucher for students with disabilities, and you can read more about that there. I'd say the takeaway here is that the current voucher amount is about $7,400. Those funds go directly to the private school, not to the family. And then we're going to talk about how the voucher amount and eligibility exploded here in the next couple slides. So this is what the legislature did in 2023 with that two-year budget. That purple spike that you see on the right-hand side, that's how much vouchers expanded, how much millions of more dollars they poured into the program in 2023 in that state budget. Okay, that's the purple spike. At the same time, they were expanding eligibility. So initially, when the program was sold to the public, we were told that it was for low-income, vulnerable children to escape failing public schools. And so the income limit was 133% of the free and reduced lunch qualifying amount. And the child had to have been previously enrolled in public school. Now, currently, there is no family income limit. It does not matter. You can make upwards of, $500,000, be a millionaire. It doesn't matter. You are still able to qualify for a voucher. And that's what this chart lays out for us. On the side, you see that they're labeled tiers 1, 2, 3, and 4. Tiers 3 and 4 are new with the most recent expansion. And in 2021, the state budget basically allowed $500,000 a year to market the voucher program. And because families were not using the money that was available, they increased that to $1 million to help publicize the program and promote it with families. You'll see there that the applications for this current school year, so the children that are starting school either now, or coming up in August, the people that applied for the most of the voucher money fall into that tier 3 at $115,000 to $259,000 yearly income. And then you can see the other breakdowns in tiers 1, 2, and 4. But tier 3, that was the income, family income level that applied for the most vouchers. So what did the General Assembly do? Because they ran out of voucher money to give out, they didn't want these folks to be on a wait list. So the red line, the purple line you see is the same spike I showed you 2 slides ago that happened in 2023. The red line you see is what happened in May of this year, 2 months ago during the short session. And a couple of things here. This was the first thing that they did in the short session. Not restore the corporate tax rate, not give teachers a raise, not restore teaching assistants, not eliminate the pre-K waiting list, not approve universal school meals. No, they passed House Bill 823. And just so that they were clear on their intentions, they called it Eliminate School Choice Program Wait Lists. So they weren't shy about what they were doing. And that's that, again, that red line, that red spike. And you can just see that we are now on track to spend more than $800 million per year on private school vouchers by 2032. So where does all that money go? It's going to mostly religious schools. So these are the top 4 recipients of the voucher dollars since the program started in 2015. So this is, not just one single year, but these are the top 4 recipients since we've had the program. And you can see that 2 of them are located in Cumberland County, and then we've got Lee County and Onslow County. And you see over there on the right that every year, between 88% and 92% of all voucher funds are going to religious schools. I'm sorry that this chart is just slightly blurry. I hope you can see it, but this is it's the same information showing you. The orange are non-religious schools and the purple are the religious schools, and you see there the dollar amounts on the left side. So it's the same information, just in a bar graph form. And here's voucher demographics. So what we see that's happened over time, and again, when the program started in 2014-15, we were told that it was for poor children from, vulnerable children from low-income households, to escape their failing schools, right? But look at what has happened over time, which we, feel it was the intention all along. So we've expanded eligibility, we've, blown the roof off of the income cap limit, and we see that Black and African American children are getting how much the decline has been in them getting the vouchers, and how much it has gone up for white children. And then you can see those other demographics represented in the chart. But that's the big takeaway, is to see the discrepancy into where we were told while we were doing this in the first place and where we are today. It's very important that you know that in North Carolina, vouchers have zero accountability. This is a quote from a Duke Children's Law Clinic report that was done in May of 2020. This quote comes directly from that report. Quote, North Carolina has one of the weakest private school oversight systems in the country. Under state law, private schools are permitted to make their own decisions regarding curriculum, graduation requirements, teacher qualifications, number of hours of operation, and for the most part, testing. No accreditation is required of private schools. So this is a chart directly from that same report. Again, it's from the Children's Law Clinic at Duke Law School in May of 2020. The reason that I didn't put, X marks on the North Carolina side on the right is because I didn't want to alter their content. But you see here that other states that offer private school vouchers, they do require some accountability. Accreditation at state or state approval, for example, in Ohio, Vermont, Wisconsin, Louisiana, DC. Some regulated curriculum in all of those states across the board. Certified teachers in many states, they require that. They require some testing program. That one's a little more hit or miss, as you can see, not every state requires that. And then regulated hours or hours of instruction or days of school. Not in North Carolina. And that's what the researchers found at the law clinic. So it's very important to understand that. And we at Public Schools First NC are unapologetically opposed to public dollars going to private schools. We are opposed to private school vouchers. But if they're going to be in North Carolina, we believe that this has got to change. They should be regulated. They should, we've got to implement some accountability for these millions and millions of taxpayer dollars that are going into these schools. And here's a breakdown of what public schools require and what is required of private schools in North Carolina. And I want to be sure to get my notes straight here, so I apologize. Give me a second. We can, look over this together. Now, as we look at these, I've got two charts for you that show this, these types of requirements, that public schools have to adhere to, but private schools do not. We are not saying that you cannot find a private voucher school in North Carolina that does follow, say, the K-3 class size law, or perhaps in their school, they do require every teacher to be licensed. So we're not making the claim that no private school offers any of these things that are required of the public schools. What we are trying to inform you about is that per state law and, under the voucher legislation, no voucher school is required of these things. So I want to be real clear about that. So they're not required to participate in the state accountability program. They are not required to do the same end of course, end of grade testing that public schools do. They are not given the A through F school letter grades. So those are not student grades. They're A through F letter grades for the school. The public schools are graded and charter schools are graded, but voucher schools do not receive those A through F school letter grades. They are not required to use the North Carolina Standard Course of Study. They are not required to follow state calendar law. They are not required to follow the K-3 class size legislation. They are not required to have every teacher licensed. They are not required to provide work days or professional development opportunities. And they are not governed, by an elected school board. They are not required to provide special education services. They are not required to provide free and reduced price meals. They are not required to provide student transportation or abide by transportation safety standards, the way that the yellow school buses are. They are not accountable to taxpayers or to county commissioners for use of local funding. or state funding for that matter, they are not required to make their financial records public. And they're not, again, governed by a transparent, public, uniform admission policies or discipline policies. Those are not required to be public. And voucher schools discriminate with our tax dollars, which we think is wrong. We don't believe that taxpayer money should be used to discriminate. So how do they discriminate? Oh, and let me say, on the right side of your screen, you're looking at the cover of a report that we did in 2024, or in January. It was updated and released. We actually did it last fall. Anyway, it's a report about voucher schools across the state. It's very extensive. It's available for free on our website. And it's, so that's what you're looking on the right-hand side of your screen. And it gives many, many examples of what we mean when we talk about how they discriminate. So we're going to talk about 3 tonight, just give you 3 examples, all from this report, again, that you can access on our website. So in Fayetteville, at Fayetteville Christian School, the student has to live, with a parent that the student and the parent have to be in full agreement with the Christian school's statement of faith. They have to confirm that they've received Jesus Christ as their Savior. The parent and the student must regularly fellowship in a local faith-based Bible-believing church. They're very clear that they do not admit families that belong to or express faith in non-Christian religions. And you can read that last one there. I'm checking to see, I think this is the one. Let's see. Yeah, so this is from their student handbook, and when we pulled this in 2024, it was available on their website, and now the handbook is protected behind a password-protected firewall. So you can't look at it anymore at this particular school, but that's where this came from. Also in Fayetteville, this one is Green Baptist Academy, and this is discrimination based on ability. You can see there, as I told you, they're not required to provide any of this, but they're letting parents know very, very clearly that they don't offer these services and won't be able to, help your child if they fit into any of these needs-based services. They're not going to get them at Berean Baptist Academy. And this is where it extends into the home. So discrimination, again, on lifestyle, that they can refuse any applicant or discontinue the enrollment of a student if the atmosphere or conduct within a particular home or the activities of the student are counter or in opposition to the biblical lifestyle the school teaches. And you can see it goes on to explain what they mean by that. Homosexual activity, bisexual activity, promoting such activities, or being unable to support the moral principles of the school. And I forgot to mention, obviously, you can see those dollar amounts on the right-hand side of your screen. That's the amount that the school received in the 2023-2024 school year. I just went back so you can have a look at those numbers again. So another piece of the where is all that money going? It goes to mostly our larger, more urban, wealthier counties. And you'll see on the next slide, that means that taxpayers across the state are spending these millions and millions of dollars of taxpayer money that's concentrated into mostly urban areas for private school students in those counties. So just because taxpayers in, say, I don't know, Lee County, it just depends whether or not there's a voucher school in your county. There might not be any, but you're contributing to the private school tuition of these other folks in Cumberland, Wake, Guilford, and Mecklenburg. And here's a heat map of that or a concentration map that shows you where the voucher dollars are going. So there's many, many rural counties across the state that are subsidizing these vouchers in urban areas. We have on our website something called, it's a county profile data. It's a tool that you can use to find where the voucher dollars are going in your county. So this is the page. I'll show you how to get to it in a few minutes. But when you get to this page under county profile data, if you scroll down about halfway, you'll see there below we put a big purple arrow where you can find the opportunity scholarship dollars in your county. So this is from our friends at the North Carolina Justice Center. They analyzed what all these millions of voucher dollars could be used for. So the planned voucher funding, and if you'll recall that purple and red, spike. So what's planned, for the coming years, that's what we're talking about when we say planned funding. They could do one of the things on the left side of your screen. So they could either, that money could go to hire 8,000 classroom teachers, which would be an increase of 9%, raise teacher pay by 10%. It could fund almost enough counselors, school social workers, school nurses, and school psychologists that would meet the industry recommended levels, and that would be for schools across the state, the whole state. Or it could do all of the things listed on the right side. It could restore cuts to teaching assistants, textbook funds, and classroom supplies, provide universal school meals, that would be breakfast and lunch, and establish the community schools model to 800 schools in North Carolina. So it could do all of those things on the right side, or one of the things on the left. And we believe that would be a much better use of taxpayer resources. So before I shift to advocacy, I think we should take a minute and answer some questions because we're doing well on time. And we've flown through a lot. Yvonne, do you want to?
Yeah, I think that one of the things I saw here right away was Laura said, what if we don't agree with this? Can we, do we still have to, can we opt out of paying our state taxes? No. I'm sorry. No, but so I'm trying to just give me a second here. I was going to maybe if you don't mind, maybe quit sharing just for one moment and let me see if I can see some of our guests and see if anybody has your hand up or if you'd like to unmute yourself and ask your question. We're very formal here. Anyone? If anyone has any questions to this point of any of the slides that we've presented? Okay.
Can I?
Okay, Linda Brinkley, please go ahead.
Hey, do you want us to raise our hand or?
You can just speak, Linda, go right ahead.
So is there any chart or anything you guys have that displays enrollment counts at different schools? I'd love to know like how many students they have versus how much money they're getting and just, do you have that?
Yes.
You
We
do?
know how many, we know how many vouchers. Go ahead.
They're not required. Well, they're not required to tell us their enrollment. They're not required to report that. But Yvonne, you might have a different way of framing that.
I'm not, no, Lynn, I'm agreeing with you. What I was going to say is that we know how many vouchers go to a private school, right? Like we know that they got X dollars and that represents X vouchers, but we know very other little about private schools. And, I want to also dispel quickly one of the things that people ask us about all the time, which is the quality of private schools. And of course, that's the private schools from the majority of the private schools in North Carolina are not what we've seen in movies. You know, they're not ivy towers and big campuses with gorgeous buildings and well-paid scholars who are there teaching the classes, right? They are, most of them are, you know, run by small nonprofits or run by small churches. And they are not, you know, they're in all kinds of buildings, shopping centers, basements. Those kind of things are not lofty campuses. Carolyn Bunker.
Yes, two questions. The first one is, the slides are so wonderful. Will they be available to us? Can you send those out to us later or release those to us? My second question is, we all know that very often students will go to these private schools and for whatever reason, they're not a fit. Their parents withdraw them or the school kicks them out. And that money stays within that particular private school. Do we know how many students in North Carolina who enroll in some of these private schools then return to the public school system within the year?
We do not. Again, the ability to gather data is incredible. So now an individual school district, let's say Wake County, maybe they keep track of when kids come into their system. They might sometimes know where they're coming from. They certainly know if they're coming from another public school or from another state, but they don't often know if this was a homeschool child, this was a private school child. If, you know, and so unless a school district itself is keeping track of this, there's no way to know. And then, you know, I just recently, Lynn, reached out to a lot of the superintendents and to the North Carolina Association of School Superintendents and to the North Carolina School Board Association, and they're all saying we have hit or miss data. Occasionally we get it, sometimes we don't really know.
Well, let me add, school districts, the parents are not required to disclose that information. You know, it's really when a school district enrolls a child that is new to them, it's the same as if they moved into the district, like from out of state. As Yvonne said, if they were in a North Carolina public school and they moved from one district to another, that is known because there's a student ID that follows that child. If they were in a North Carolina private school, they have that same, you know, student ID. So the receiving school district is going to know that information. But if a child comes, as Yvonne said, from homeschool or private school, or is just moving here from out of state, that's not, the parent does not have to disclose that. So it's messy. It's not an easy data point to collect. And I want to respond to something in the chat before we move to Laura and Donna. Those are the two hands I see. So I love the question in the chat. Thank you. I think it was Margaret that asked about how is this constitutional? Well, there was in 2015, when the voucher scheme started, there was a lawsuit and it went to the North Carolina Supreme Court. And they deemed that vouchers are constitutional in our state. So there was a lawsuit. We did not win it. And when I say we, I don't necessarily mean Public Schools First NC. I just mean those, you know, the collective we that were opposing vouchers and claiming that they were not constitutional. But that the ruling of the court was that they are constitutional. And to my knowledge, I don't think a new suit can be brought. But Yvonne, I don't know if you have a different,
I would just
different information.
I'll add this, Lynn, to what you said. And that court was a conservative court. And the lawsuit was brought by the Southern Coalition of Social Justice, along with the North Carolina Association of Educators and several other parents who sued on behalf of their children. And it was shocking, actually, that we lost that case, because that same case has been brought in other states where they won, where it was said, yes, it is not constitutional, you know, to do that. And at this point, Lynn is right, and we cannot rehear a case. You'd have to have a new point of law to bring a case. And with a court right now that is pro-voucher, it would probably be a lot of effort and with little benefit and a lot of money. We spent a ton of money fighting it in 2015. And all that had to be privately raised, and we just don't have that capacity now, and we don't have a new angle at this point. And so what we need is for a new North Carolina Supreme Court to, on their own, initiate, something around this. And so far, they haven't. Our best recourse is for the North Carolina General Assembly to stop funding vouchers. That's it. If they decide not to fund vouchers anymore or to reduce while they're funding it, it's over. So the best recourse for us is our elected officials in the North Carolina General Assembly. Okay, Donna.
I had a question about homeschools, whether or not they're eligible for any funding, especially like homeschool groups, that could consider themselves to be a private school, but, they're actually not meeting together very often.
Lynn, did you want me to jump in or? Homeschoolers,
Go ahead, Yvonne. No, go ahead.
Homeschoolers cannot just band together and be a private school. There are rules about registering as a private school and all that kind of stuff. And there are a few requirements, like you have to have one person in the school have a background check, some kind of a safety thing. So they don't tend to do that, but they do have now what is called the educational savings account, which is basically almost like, I don't know, I call it a credit card to buy whatever you want. As long as you can say that this is for education, right? And it can be almost anything that you want it to be. So that's a whole nother form of graph that and potential graph that we could talk about, but we won't talk about that now. But there are North Carolina's personal education student account for children with disabilities. They're allowed to access these funds, and they're able to use these funds. I think it's up to around $9,000 a kid, maybe. It could be that for certain disabilities, it can be higher, and they are allowed to use that money in whatever ways they think they can justify, although there's very little auditing to any of this. So Donna, that's a short answer, but I encourage you to Google, education savings account in North Carolina, and you'll be able to see how that's run.
Well, and we have a fact sheet about it
Thank you,
too.
Lynn.
So yeah.
Okay, and I'll try to find that link while we're talking and put it in the chat. Laura, I'm going to let you go, and then we're going to jump back into Lynn's slideshow.
Okay. All right. Thank you. One is perhaps more of an observation than the other is a question, but I understand that there are many reasons why families would want to send their children to smaller private schools, whatever. But I am somewhat surprised, as persnickety as a lot of those parents are, that they are not more concerned about all of the requirements that those schools do not have to meet. So that is just a personal observation. Maybe they're all going to the one or two that actually require some standards of accountability. And then my other question is, which is really scary, but I'm just curious, in those Christian schools, I think it was Fayetteville Christian, where they make you swear that Jesus is your savior, yada, yada, yada. Very curious how they prove that. And also that might've been the same one that is very interested in your lifestyle and practices at home. And what are they having chips installed in the children's chest? Do they have the homes wired for audio and video? I mean, it's just utterly unbelievable that they have something like that. And also, by the way, is it applicable to the staff and the way they live their lives?
Yes, most of the places, I'll answer quickly, because you said a whole bunch in that, Laura. So let me just unpack it a few quick things at a time. One is, it is shocking sometimes to think that people would put their children in a situation that might not be ideal. But remember, that a lot of these schools are religious schools. And so for some people, their priority in looking for an education for their children, and I'm not criticizing this, okay? It is that they want a church led curriculum. They want church to be a part of that. You know, it's no different than Catholic church. You know, we all probably have a lot of experience with Catholic schools. So for a lot of people, that is more important to them than some of the other things that I might worry about, for example, right? I might worry about wanting to make sure my kid had advanced physics and advanced chemistry. Somebody else might say, I'm more concerned that they have a good foundation in an understanding of their faith. So it's different. The other thing is that yes, staff have to also agree to the school principals, just like the students. And the thing that's scary to me is not all that chipping. I don't think they can do that. But what we do know is true is that if they find you in violation, or they think you've violated, or they think that you've moved away from their norm, you can be kicked out in 5 minutes. You're out. Okay, and we know that in public schools, that's not true. Right, and there's a due process for every child, every staff, everyone. And so due process is totally missing from private schools. And so some of our angst is with our greatest angst, I would say, is with these private religious schools, because they have so many layers of things that children and their families have to do that have nothing to do with a high quality, equitable education that our Constitution says that they deserve. So with that said, I am going to go ahead and let Lynn move forward a little bit, and we're going to have some more time at the end.
Yeah, and Laura, I just wanted to add, and this is for the good of the group, there are some excellent private schools in North Carolina. We don't deny that at all. But they're very expensive. They way exceed the amount of the voucher, even if you get the maximum amount of the voucher at $7,400 or whatever it is right now, about $7,000 plus. And so, the families that are accessing those really excellent private schools, if they take a voucher, the families, are having to come up with a whole lot more money. And in many cases, they were already doing that. They were already paying for private school tuition, but now they get a coupon to continue attending there. So anyway, so there's no question that there's some excellent private schools that graduate kids that go on to do, they get into, universities and they achieve great academically, et cetera, but that's not the majority. So. All right, so we are going back to advocacy. That question, I think one of the first questions, what can we do about all this? There's plenty. And I want to bring us back to PTA. Again, since we partnered with North Carolina PTA tonight, I want to provide these advocacy resources that are available through the North Carolina PTA. There's the advocacy page. They have advocacy tips. And they have some webinars about advocacy, and the national PTA has a YouTube channel that also has some resources for how PTAs can advocate. At Public Schools First, we offer a wide variety of ways that you can advocate. So this is our homepage. This is just a screenshot, but it is we have an Engage tab at the top. You see it's Home, About, Issues, and then Engage. If you click on the Engage tab, you get a drop-down menu, and we are focusing on the Contact Elected Officials page. On that page, you can, type in your own message, or you can use one of our sample emails that we've already drafted in opposition to vouchers. You can, whichever way you'd like to go, but that's a resource that's available to you. And it also tells you how to find your elected official if you would rather contact them directly. A little while ago, I showed you a very busy slide with that purple arrow at the bottom, and it was directing you how to find the voucher dollars that are being spent in your county. So this is that page. It is called the County Profile Data page. And that is under our resources tab. And although we're talking about the county profile data, I'll just point out that resources is where you're going to find our fact sheets, legislative updates, an advocacy toolkit, and more. But if you click on the county profile data, when you click there, you land here, and you saw this same page earlier in a different screenshot. If you go to the Public Schools First NC School District profiles, so that's in the yellow circle there, the gold circle, you land here. This is what you get. And we have these for all the counties in North Carolina. This one happens to be Mecklenburg, but we have them for other counties across the state, all of them. And it just gives you sort of a snapshot of your county data. So it shows you the high school graduation rate. It shows you the per pupil expenditure and how that breaks down. It shows you your school counselor to student ratio, the local funding effort rank. And that's going to be like how your commissioners, your local governing body, what their funding effort is related to investing in public education in your district. It shows you how many eligible children are that you have that are eligible for North Carolina pre-K. It shows the teacher salary supplement in your county. You get some enrollment information. And then on the second half, or on the back, like if you were to print this would be on the second page or the back page. You see, if we were to fund Leandro, and we have other webinar programs on Leandro, so we're not going to get into that tonight. But if Leandro were fully funded, you get to see what that would mean for Mecklenburg County, or for Lee County, or for Wake County, or Orange County, or wherever it is. We have these for every county in the state. And that data, the Leandro piece, is from our friends at Every Child NC. They compiled that for all the districts across the state, and it's a great resource. And we included it here on these county profile data sheets. Another thing that I'll point out to you, if you look on the far right, about halfway down, you will see the top 3 employers in your county. Now, in Mecklenburg, the public school district is not among the top 3, but I think it's like 90%. Yvonne, you can correct me if I'm wrong. About 90% of the counties in the state, the school district of that county is in the top 3 employers of that county. So when we don't fully fund our school districts, we're not just, there's a business case to be made. So yes, it is about students. It is always about educating our students and educating them well. But we're also not funding one of our top 3 employers, and that hurts our neighbors. That hurts people in our community that work in our public schools. So there is a definite business case to be made for fully funding public schools, and that's where you can find it. Again, this is just Mecklenburg, but you can look up your own county on that tool on our website. Okay, advocacy with regards to elections. And yes, PTAs can talk about the elections, and I'm going to tell you how. So this is specific for PTAs, because PTAs are 501c3 organizations, so they cannot endorse candidates or do candidate rankings or anything like that. But what they can do is, on the left side in the green, you can conduct and promote voter registrations at your school. You can host candidate forums as long as you include all candidates. You can distribute nonpartisan sample ballots. You can educate people about the dates of the election, where to get their sample ballot, how to get out the vote. And you can take positions on ballot measures. So for example, now this would be more at the local level. If your school district has a bond, a school bond on the ballot, for the county district, a PTA can take a position on supporting that bond measure. So not candidates, but if there's a bond measure, you can support that as a PTA unit. And I know that the North Carolina PTA is open to anybody that's got any questions. So again, you cannot rate or grade or score candidates, and you can't, favor one candidate over another. You cannot like print materials on behalf of a candidate, that kind of thing. But it's important to know when PTAs get a lot of pushback saying they cannot do this, and it's simply not true. So November 2024, we all know, whoops, I didn't mean to advance quite that fast. So this is how we, part of what we're doing to get out information is we're sharing important dates and reminding PTAs that you can share candidate info as long as you do that for all the candidates in equal measures. And you can share nonpartisan resources, and you can educate folks about voter ID. So this is for PTA and beyond. So all of our audience, I know we've got a bunch of league folks here. We're all going to be saturated with information about the president and the governor and Congress, but there's a lot more on the ballot that a lot of voters won't know is coming. They don't know all the races that are going to be on there, and we can do a lot by educating folks that we are also going to have lieutenant governor, superintendent of public instruction, state auditor, state treasurer, attorney general, and more. The legislature, all of the North Carolina House, the North Carolina Senate. We've got judges on the ballot this year, and then there's local. So in some counties, there are school board elections on the November ballot, or there are county commission elections on the November ballot. So these are things that we need to tell our networks and our friends. Don't have to tell people who to vote for or how to vote, but just letting them know that it's a lot and people need to do their homework and start doing it now. It's not too early. We have a campaign called Be a Public Education Voter, and that's under the Engage tab that we looked at earlier. And one of the things I want to point out here is that we have a candidate education position questionnaire, and we send this to every state level candidate as soon as the filing is closed. Whether or not they complete it and submit it, we don't have any control over that, but we make every effort to send it. We do send it to everyone. And for those that don't respond, we often send it to them multiple times to give them multiple opportunity. So we've received some. We started doing this after the primary in March. So a lot have come in, and if you go to the Engage tab and look for that candidate education questionnaire, you'll find, you can look up, to see who has submitted their responses. If you don't know about the race for superintendent of public instruction, this is a state superintendent. You need to educate yourself. There's a lot of contrast between these two candidates. And we've listed, just alphabetical order, Mo Green and Michelle Morrow. And if your friends don't know about this race, you need to educate them, not necessarily, just send them to each candidate's website. But every voter in North Carolina needs to know that this race is on the ballot, and they need to pay attention to it, and they need to be prepared to vote. On September 21st, we are doing a half-day conference in Raleigh at the McKimmon Center. It is free, which we're very, very excited about. And our lead, or our guest for the day is Jennifer Berkshire. She is the author of a new book called The Education Wars. And she is also the host of the podcast, Have You Heard? I know a lot of folks that follow public education issues are very familiar with that podcast. It's very popular, but she is going to be our guest in person on Saturday, September 21st. And she's going to be moderating. We're going to talk to her about her book. And then she's also going to be leading a discussion with some other education guests, some special guests on a panel about advocating on behalf of public schools. In the middle of our program that day, we are going to talk live with Diane Ravitch, who is one of our sheroes. She's going to be talking with author Josh Cowan. He's a researcher and author, and he has got a book about public schools vouchers and their history and the agenda behind them, privatization, et cetera. They are going to be joining us live via Zoom, and there will be audience participation with a Q&A with Diane and Josh. So please plan to join us on the 21st. Oh, and there's one thing it just occurred to me, and this is what I get for not following my notes. So we got the state superintendent of public instruction. Just a couple of things. So what do? This person manages is it 7 or 9? Hang on, I got it in my notes right here. They manage a $17 billion budget. That's billion with a B. So that's one of the duties that they have. They manage and carry out all of the rules and regulations from the State Board of Education, and they manage about 1,600 employees, and they oversee every school district in the whole state. So it's a big job. It's a big deal. And voters need to be prepared for who they want to fill that position. I also want to tell you that the lieutenant governor, regardless of who that is, the lieutenant governor in North Carolina is automatically appointed and seated as a member of the State Board of Education. And I don't have the candidates for lieutenant governor on the screen tonight or in the slide deck, but you can find out who those folks are. Just understand that that person, whoever it is that's elected, will be a sitting member, a voting member of the State Board of Education. So a lot of folks don't know that. I didn't know it until about 5 years ago. So that's an important bit of information. And that's it. This is how you can find us and contact us. We are all over social media, and I'll maybe some of you will find this funny. I went to TikTok kicking and screaming. But we, Public Schools First is on TikTok now. And if you have TikTok, you definitely want to check us out because we've got some great content over there, but that's new for us. We've got tons of webinars on our YouTube channel. They're all free to access. Anybody can watch them at any time. And we want you to find us on these other social media platforms, Facebook, X, Instagram. Please email us, and you've got our website listed at the bottom. And I'm going to be quiet and answer or let Yvonne answer more questions, and I'll chime in if necessary. Thanks.
Lynn, thank you. And I'm going to quit sharing just for a second, y'all, so we can see all of you a little bit more carefully. We have just a little bit longer. We can keep you on here. You have to go. We promised you 7 to 8. Please jump off. But if you can stay a little bit longer, you have a few more questions, Lynn and I are more than happy to answer these questions for you. And I just kind of want to end by saying for myself that this is not about, as Lynn said earlier, if somebody chooses to have a private education, school education, or homeschool education. Our position is simply that our Constitution in North Carolina guarantees a free, high-quality public education to every child. And as such, we feel like our tax dollars should be going to fully fund our public schools. And while our public schools are not funded and not adequately funded, as been proven by the North Carolina Supreme Court several times now, then, you know, we do not agree with the opportunity then to use our public tax dollars to fund private education. Private education should be someone's personal choice, and they should have to pay for it, just like we pay for private roads, right? We have public roads that are public good, and we put our taxes together. So we believe that the taxpayers of North Carolina have made a covenant with the North Carolina General Assembly to use our tax dollars for the public good. So public education is open to every child. No child can be denied admissions as long, you know, and we take every child that walks through the schoolhouse door. So our concern is that we have a situation where we're not fully, equitably, adequately funding our public education system. And then we are instead using these tax dollars to fund a private education. And we also take, I need to make this clear, we care about children. All of you on this call are child advocates. Probably before you were a public education advocate, you were a child advocate. And as a child advocate, I don't think it's appropriate to have public dollars used in a private setting where we do not know how children are treated, We do not know what they are forced to do or to agree to. We do not know their outcomes, if they're getting the education that we're paying for. There's a lack of accountability on how the money is spent and how children are educated is of great concern to us as child advocates, which is a totally separate issue to our public tax dollars. So is there anybody else that has anything they would like to share or make a comment or raise a question? Going once? Twice? Okay, then I want to thank Lynn for her hard work on putting together this presentation. Heather Coons is not here tonight. Heather Coons is our communication director. She does a lot of research on vouchers for us. And we appreciate the help that she gave to Lynn and to myself in terms of pulling together this information. We love to do these webinars. We would love to do a webinar sometime for your organization, for your PTA, your church group, your civic organization. And so, you know, just let us know, info@publicschoolsfirstnc.org, and if we can help you, and we're happy to do that. Again, please join us in September 21st. We have not been together in person so very long. We really want to have as many people there as we can, and we think it's going to be a fabulous program. We're going to have a lot of good conversation, and we want to leave that event on September 21st with an action plan of things that we can do to strengthen, protect, and save public education. Thank you all so much for joining us. Lynn, I'm going to hang around and we can close this out at the very end. Good night, everybody. Thank you for coming.